Uta here with some sun coming through the window on my first peek of the peonies and the roses, including my favorite, now luminescent in the sun, lark ascending. As well, the end of the irises, Dracula's Kiss and uh, Medici Prince, both blooming for the first time in my iris bed in the backyard. And the exciting thing about irises is they will increase as you go through the season. The tubers will grow, and then when they're getting big and crowded, you take the big pitchfork and lift them and divide them, replant them, and you have more. And I plan. You can go to my nature short videos to see more of the irises and from the early spring, the daffodils and everything. This almost looks funny. I'm going to see if it looks better on there. It's on the pink peonies. All right. So, first of all, that's kind of odd. Yeah. Okay. I saw from Exolanzic, from Sierra, that she is no longer making a differentiation between desisters and detransitioners. Um, uh, in general, people call someone who did not do puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries, but decided that they are not going to identify any longer as the opposite sex. Uh, that has generally been called a desister, with the understanding that the detransition, the moving away from this ideation, is perhaps a little easier because they're intact in their body. Now, what I observe is that they're not intact in their personal history. They've lost a lot of time, and usually at a very, very important stage of development, meaning either their teen years or their early 20s. And this is very um, considerable. It's considerable that the time has been stolen from you, and you will never have it back. And I feel the same way about the trauma that my now ex-husband Nettie caused me, and the years which, in many ways, in terms of just emotional um, well-being, I had years in the 1990s that were stolen from me by him and his diagnosing psychologist, Dr. Connie, and his non-professional therapist who supposedly was working under the supervision of Dr. Connie, who is Ruth the Charlatan in my memoir. Yes, so what I want to do now is just go through some really key phrases, because I feel that with the many, many Scandinavian studies, you can go to my blog, utahagengrasswidow.wordpress.com. That's always the last line in the description below each video, and look at all the studies coming out of Scandinavia, coming out of the United Kingdom. And there is actually one recent study from the US now where the rate of leaving off this idea is very high, and the whole suicide myth that they use to pressure parents and to pressure the wives, etc., is basically debunked. So we're starting to see some actually statistically significant studies. The one out of the US, I'm pretty sure I've got it on my blog. The one out of the US was using similar to the Swedish study, it was using records as opposed to interviewing people. And I think it was using some death records and doing this matched of controls and of just general public, age matched and so on, with the people who had done the surgeries and puberty blockers, hormones, etc. Um, so it's just we're starting to really see uh, evidence coming out along with a great deal of denial. But we all knew that there was going to be this denial of the facts. Um, you know, I I really think things might be moving faster than I had predicted, actually. Um, so I'm just recommending now to memorize a few phrases. And this is from this uh, organization, Democrats for Informed something of about gender. It's diag.org. And I registered with it so that I could get this information. It's a little bit too long to go through all of it right here, but I think it is time for us to start talking to our friends and relatives that we have avoided speaking about this topic. It is time now to start talking. And I base this on a recent conversation that I had with just a random person. I'm trying to find the best side of this. Ooh, that's pretty. um, and very fashionable fashion industry person, very much, ally, etc. But we got in conversation and she listened to me and she seemed to sympathize with me. She said she knew one couple who the husband had done what my ex-husband Nettie did. And she was very sympathetic to her. And then she said, "Oh, but I lost touch. I started to ask, find out if maybe she would want to contact me and be part of my survey." And I started telling her, this woman allowed me to just start saying, well, I've got a lot of data. I have the responses of 60 trans widows, and what we've gone through in a consistent 1/3 of the cases is physical assault that is never prosecuted, etc. But what I'm going to focus on now is this information debunking this whole overblown suggestion that if a child is ideating an opposite sex persona, that they are suddenly in severe risk of taking their own life at some point. So the implied threat of this, which is put on to parents, right, left, and center, the implied threat heightens the emotional stakes and pressures parents into making rapid, fear-based medical decisions. I think that is a phrase we need to memorize. Oh, but don't you see, the parents are making rapid, fear-based medical decisions. This is therapists way overstepping what the role of a therapist is. And I know this because of the sworn affidavits that Dr. Connie, who diagnosed, admittedly in her own affidavit, said she diagnosed Nettie on July 20th, 1993, in the first appointment. So it's a myth that there's this lengthy process, layers of the onion are peeled away. No, that's a myth. And it's a myth that is based on conflict of interest of exactly people like Dr. Connie, a PhD psychologist. Uh, and the integrity of informed consent is compromised. Let me repeat that again. You need to give informed consent. Of course, I gave informed consent when I had a bone tumor removed from the top of the outside of my skull. I knew that I could die during the operation, but I could die if I didn't have the operation. And it was informed consent. We went through the whole thing. It was a medically necessary surgery. I was probably going to have something very serious if I didn't get this bone tumor the size of a half of a golf ball removed from the top of my head. Now, I know also that there is scar neuroma. Now, scar neuroma is something that I don't think is written and explained in informed consent. And it seems to me that there's a lot of fine print in the informed consent. The neurosurgeon who worked on me, who did carpentry on my head, thank you, Dr. Hirschfeld, now retired, he went over it all, because he knew I had children. He knew that these are, this is really important. And this is not happening with surgeries that completely change the urinary tract. There is no informed consent. And doctors and surgeons need to start recognizing that this is medical malpractice to believe in informed consent for sex trait modification surgeries. Take away the word gender. Gender is all pretend. It's a grammatical term used in language. Okay. Dubious or even questioning parents are seen as misguided and misinformed. They're given false assurances. These are false assurances that there's overwhelming evidence. No, there isn't overwhelming evidence. The Dutch study that this is based on was funded by Ferring Pharma Company. It started out with 70 subjects, 15 dropped out. And we never hear about the follow-up for that. 2 died, one from suicide afterward, probably out of just being unable to deal with the intense pain after this optional, unnecessary surgery, and the other died from sepsis after having part of his colon inserted in between his prostate and the rest of his colon. And guess what? There was fecal matter, and he got sepsis. All of this is so unpleasant to talk about, but sorry. These are the realities. This is why I keep these flowers here, because I want us to still be connected to beauty and nature when we have to talk about these really, really unbelievable, harmful, iatrogenic, medical malpractice effects of this entire cult. Teens are coached in online chat rooms. I'm sure that my ex-husband was coached. He was coached by Ruth the Charlatan, who was a so-called therapist who had no credentials. She told me she didn't have a college degree. I spoke with her on the phone, and I met her in person. They threaten suicide if their parents don't do each step. The opposite sex pronouns, the new name, officially change the name, get puberty blockers, get testosterone if you're a female, get estrogen if you're a male, pay for my surgeries. Now, I have friends whose son, I think in 2015, the big year, he was in his middle to late 20s, flew out to California, gaslit his mother to come along with him for this whole thing. And she knew that he was autistic. She said, there's nothing we could do. We could only be supportive. He's an adult. He's making these decisions. But they also took money out of their pension savings, and now they can't retire. And they are older than me. This is nuts. This is such gaslighting. So this is all I'm going to do now. The phrases are compromise of the informed consent process, okay, one last thing. This is, it's so much, but I'm just going to try to do this in bites so that we can start memorizing these phrases, because the conversations are going to start. You're going to poke a little hole in that balloon, the "be kind" in quotes balloon. A landmark study from Finland from this year, published this year, found that the main predictor of suicide in this population is anxiety and depression, and that sex trait modification interventions do not have an impact on suicide risk. And this is not from a self-proclaimed right-wing religious organization. This is from people who are declaring, I am either a centrist or left-wing, and I am questioning the foundational research for this medicalization of a psychiatric illness and ideation. All right. That's it for now. I have to go out and stake, put the stakes up by my dahlias. Those are next. The beautiful mystic spirit dahlias. So it's our homework. That's it. Because we're the ones who are going to tell the truth. Thank you to everyone, my loyal stalwarts and our new subscribers. Please do comment, tell us your conversations, like and subscribe, get the word out.